I'm so excited to have one of my very best friends here today, somebody who I admire a ton and feel inspired by all the time, Bridget Todd-Robbins. If you want to know one of the most positive, influential people in our community, really making a difference, it's Bridget. She's here today to share with us about her work as the La Crosse County Youth System of Care Administrator, where she works with schools, law enforcement, youth serving organizations, students, and their families to intervene when our students need a little extra support. Bridget was selected by our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to present today because her work truly embodies the values of equity and inclusion. Personally and professionally, Bridget is deeply committed to ensuring the young, school-aged people in our community have access to the support they deserve. She's going to do a great job explaining her work, but what she probably won't tell you is that her role is not 8 to 5. Bridget works weekends, she works evenings, she engages kids well after they graduate. She makes sure youth have presents on special holidays. She is just an absolute rock star. She's also my volleyball teammate, so she's only not nice when we lose. So anyway, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Bridget Todd-Robbins.
Well, thank you, Katie. That was so nice. Okay, so I know that I only have 20 minutes to give you a very high level overview. I just want to make sure I bring my slides up here. There we go. So I love that you ended that, I work with students well after they graduate, because just on my way here today, I had a young man who's 20 years old who just called me to say that he just got a job as a construction worker. And we've worked really hard the last 6 months applying for positions. And so I always say, like, I'm a mother to like hundreds of kids in this community, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But to really start, I wanted to basically say, like, what is system of care? And so essentially, I'll refer to it a lot as SOC. So SOC is an early intervention program um, designed to provide interventions and supports instead of giving citations or making referrals into our criminal justice system. And it's really about keeping kids out of that system, ensuring that they're mentally healthy, and really, we want kids in school ready to learn. What's really important to know about system of care is that it began and continues to be a partnership between the school district of La Crosse and La Crosse County Human Services. So even though I'm an employee of La Crosse County, the school district does pay for half of my position. And what's really beautiful about that is that you have two systems making decisions about what's in the best interest of youth and family. And essentially, it allows me to kind of like navigate between two systems that allows me to really advocate and kind of really ensure that what we're doing is working for our families. System of care, really, it's the first program of its kind in the state of Wisconsin. And it really was based on a shift of how are we going to respond differently to youth behaviors. It came out of almost 2 years of committee work that really looked at analyzing juvenile arrest data and really like gathering anecdotal information from system partners, including like school resource officers, school administrators, and individuals who actually had lived experience within the system. And back then, based on our data, we discovered that La Crosse County was actually arresting youth at a very high rate compared to other like-sized counties in the state of Wisconsin. And in addition, it was found that we had a pretty significant disproportionate minority contact issue. And basically what that means is that we were arresting racially diverse youth, especially youth who identify as Black, at an almost 8 times greater rate than our white youth. And so basically, we discovered like, we were treating kids differently based on their race. And then, secondly, we were, there were really well intentioned adults who knew that when kids showed up at school and exhibited certain behaviors, that those behaviors really were kind of a symptom of some really significant needs. That back then, the only thing we were able to do was really refer to our criminal justice system so that kids could get a social worker. And we know that that is never in the best interest of our kids. And so, again, based on that data analysis, we found that there were certain behaviors that statistically had a higher chance of getting kids into our system. And so we landed on what we called like focus acts. And those are the behaviors that are eligible for system of care at the middle school and high school level. So you can see on that slide, we had things like disorderly conduct charge, property damage, theft. And then you'll also see like chronic absenteeism. So when system of care originally launched, kids were still getting like 3 tickets in the area of truancy before they were referred on into our deeper end system. And so back then we called it truancy, and now we really look at absenteeism in a different way, and we really try hard not to give kids those truancy tickets. And then lastly, we have some like special circumstance referrals where if kids are showing up at school and we see kind of an uptick in behaviors, the school administrator can then make a referral to system of care to kind of get ahead of that issue before it rises to the level of a criminal charge. So really briefly, we launched 10 years ago, so we're in our 10th year. We started as a memorandum of understanding across system partners. And really what that MOU did is it really recognized this like philosophical shift in how we were going to handle behaviors, and then also kind of outline what would the new role of the school resource officer be in our schools. So we launched October 2016. And back then it was just me. I was the full-time administrator / case manager. That first year, I worked with about 60 youth on my own. Following that year, I was able to write a few grants, get a part-time assistant, and gather a lot of data around, how system of care was working. And so in 2021, because we were showing tremendous success in what we were doing, a couple of things happened. Number one is that the number of referrals into our youth justice system were declining. So that allowed us to shift 2 social worker positions from our deep end system into system of care, which is exactly what we wanted to see. And then with that came we were having so much success around absenteeism that we sort of said, no longer will we accept habitual truancy referrals in our criminal justice system. And instead, we're going to use this program to meet the needs of those youth. And then secondly, Human Services decided to invest further into system of care and added 2 additional positions. Then in 2024, the La Crosse Police Department approached us and said, hey, we really want to expand this into the community. So we wrote a grant, we call it Lightest Touch, and that allows us now to take referrals that happen in the evenings, on the weekends. So it might be property damage at a park, it might be a theft at Quick Trip, it might be a fight. And so now we're allowed to really wrap around those kids as well. So really briefly, how does SOC work? Essentially, one of those focus acts occurs. Then the school administrator or officer calls the family and says, this is what happened with your child today. And instead of ticketing or making a referral into our criminal justice system, we'd like to offer you this voluntary program. So your child will receive some skill development, someone to come in and really just support you. And so it is pretty rare that a family turns us down. And so once we receive that referral, we work really quickly. So we're typically meeting with that family within like 3 business days because we know like we don't want things to fester and we know that people need help. So we go to the home, we meet with the family and the youth, and we find out like what are the needs. We talk about the behavior that happened, and then we come up with a plan with the family. And then I just say we get to work. And so we communicate on a almost daily basis with our schools to ensure that what we're doing is having an impact and making sure that we're creating those relationships. When talking about SOC services, I always want to emphasize that when we launched SOC, it wasn't about, being like soft on crime per se, that we weren't going to hold kids accountable. Instead, it was like we need to be smart in how we address behaviors because I don't know if all of you have teenagers, but they do really dumb things just based on what we know about brain development alone. And so it's about like what skills are missing. And so my staff spend a tremendous amount of time working one-on-one with youth, saying like, how do you ask for help in a pro-social manner? How do you advocate for yourself when you believe something is unfair? In a way that doesn't include like inappropriate language or violence.
Okay, that's all
Stop
recycling there. Yep.
And so along the way, as we're doing all this skill development, we're really like working with the family and discovering like other needs that come up, barriers, things like transportation. I can't tell you how many parents I've met that just need someone to kind of validate their parenting skills and kind of teach them how to better support their own children. And, we always pride ourselves that our services are really flexible and very responsive. So if you need a bus pass, you get it today. You don't have to like jump through hoops and wait for a week to really deal with that specific barrier. So I always say SOC is, well, wait, let's start with this one. Did I skip one? Okay. So in regards to impact of system of care, we've worked with over 900 youth in the past 9 years, and we have about a 77% success rate, which is pretty amazing. And what that means is that when kids are enrolled in SOC, they have to meet certain requirements. And so if they do all the work and they no longer have behaviors, or they actually show an improvement in their absenteeism, that's how we define success. And so we have a really impressive reputation across the state of Wisconsin. In fact, I've been able to consult with about 11 counties thus far who have then implemented their own version of system of care, especially when it comes to the work that we do around chronic absenteeism. I had mentioned that, SOC is really rooted in that DMC, that disproportionate minority contact issue. And so it is important that we see racially diverse kids at a higher rate than white youth because we are early intervention. But that doesn't mean that we are solving all of the issues, right? Because we're still seeing some pretty significant trends that youth of color are really not doing well in our community and schools. We're seeing a higher rate of suspensions, a higher rate of behaviors, more kids not going to school. So, that will be something that our systems really need to continue to tackle. And in fact, this year, we're seeing upwards around 70% of our caseloads of over 100 youth are racially diverse. So that's really telling us that we have some significant needs that need to be addressed. I always like to point out the young man in this picture gave me permission to use his picture. He's posing with one of my staff. And it's a really beautiful thing when we get invited to graduations and are able to sit with a family and really celebrate that success. And I always want to say, the data is great and it's important, but it's the relationships that we make that really are the difference when it comes to this program. So we do a lot more than just individually working with youth. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the fact that we work with really marginalized families who are very distrustful of our systems. So we have built this reputation where it's not uncommon for us to meet with a family to say, yeah, I've heard about you from my cousin. I've heard about you from my friend. Sometimes we have a hard time discharging kids because they never want to go away. They're just like, please don't discharge me. But we work really hard to like create those relationships between those families and the systems that we're working within, right? Because oftentimes we'll meet a family and they haven't had a good experience with human services or with a school. And so it's like we feel it's our job to help like restore those relationships. In regards to our community partners and schools, like my staff are in the schools every single day, and we have the utmost admiration for school administrators and educators, and we do what we can to support them. But that doesn't mean that we stop advocating if we see, changes that need to be made. I don't know how many of you in the room know Diana Diaz-Granados. She's with the Mental Health Coalition. She's with United Way. She and I actually co-facilitate a group called Community Youth Supports every other week. And we have about 20 to 30 youth serving agencies that show up at every meeting to talk about what needs are we seeing in the community? How do we better partner? What training needs do we see in our that are needed in our staff? How do we just like communicate better to really help our community in the best way that we can? We often provide big events together so that kids get the message that we're all in this together. And then finally, system of care, something we don't have to do, but we try really hard to fill program gaps. So I ran a mom's group for 6 years on a monthly basis where I had 10 to 14 women show up on a regular basis to talk about their mental health and how to parent youth. And they have all gone on to do like really beautiful things together. This next slide, this is just like system of care in a nutshell, right? Like we believe in assertive case management. We're not going away until you realize like how much you need us. And so like we tackle this like through our relationships and our engagement. Because we believe that when youth and families feel seen and supported and connected, that we build this culture of care. And so people just do better. They're more successful. They stay out of our deep end systems. And I just wanted to leave you with a little bit more information around like, we had a formal evaluation done on system of care in 2025. So they looked at 2 professors, Dr. Lisa Cruz and Dr. Nick Bakken, again, looked at current juvenile arrest data. They interviewed people across our systems. And basically what they came back with is like, yes, this is working. It works when you build relationships. And they talked a lot about, but there's still more work to be done, right? Our truancy rates are still really significantly poor. We have that disproportionate minority contact issue we need to tackle. And we need to talk about school suspensions, especially for our racially diverse youth. So I think I did pretty good. So thank you. Right in there. Sure, yes.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. I see a couple hands already. So I'll do Tim and then go to Leo, and that's about all the time we have for questions.
Hey, Bridget, great presentation. For those of you who don't know, Bridget used to babysit our kids and was wonderful. But 2 questions.
Yeah.
Confidential. But one question is, how are these kids involved with your program, accepted back into the school system with their peers and with their academic leaders?
Yeah.
And the second question is, I don't know of gang problems that we have in the community. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. is there a problem?
Yeah, I think we don't see gang issues being prevalent in lacrosse. So to answer your other question, one of the things that we do off the bat is when we get a referral, we like to bring the family in to meet with school together so that we are all on the same page. So we talk about, and encourage the restoring of relationships between kids and educators and kids or administrators, and really talk that through, like, what is it going to take for this kid to come back into the classroom and be successful. So we're like advocating, speaking on behalf of youth and families to really encourage that dialogue. And again, I mean, we want to be able to go away at some point. So it's really important that those relationships are created, and that those youth feel supported by one caring adult within that school building.
I like to know if your organization activates hobby clubs for the kids to get them involved in different things, because what I've noticed that children in clubs, especially hobby clubs, open up much easier than on a one-to-one talk, and you will be amazed what you hear from these kids.
So interestingly enough, I have a master's in therapeutic recreation. So I believe that leisure activities are the greatest modality you can use to build skills and relationships. And so, yes, we work really closely with the YMCA, with the Boys and Girls Club, with our schools to create, like, we've had social justice clubs, independent living groups. We take big field trips in the summer and teach kids how to kayak, and we play volleyball and pickleball and all the things. And actually, I'm kind of a nerd at heart, so I'm actually starting a board game club. And so we're going to be launching that soon. I've been talking to folks from BGC and the Y about that. So first I have to teach the adults how to play the games, and then we're going to invite the kids in. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget. Thanks again. And Bridget, we do have a small gift for you. Okay, Sue Durkee, a small gift from you from our club. And our theme this year is